Hi, everybody. Dan Oman, Mike Beer. We're in a celebratory mood here at DRF because last week we exceeded 20,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. I want to thank our producers, Chloe and Lucia, for their excellent work, all the great handicappers and analysts that contribute to the DRF YouTube channel. And of course, I want to thank all of you who allow us into your homes and on your phones to watch the DRF analysis and let us talk racing with you. And if you haven't subscribed just yet, please do so, because join the party. We've got cupcakes, 20K, DRF. Mike, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it certainly is. I got a cupcake too, in case you were wondering. I got one. Yeah, I want to thank everybody for subscribing, Dan. I gotta feel like most people probably join in because of you, Dan. You're a true professional. I'm happy to be working with you, and I'm happy people tune in.
Mike, you're very honest, and that's why you're a great handicapper, because you can spot talent. That's why he's the best analyst in the business. Thank you very much. 20,000 subscribers. Here's to 20K more.
Hi everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski here, taking a look at the feature race at Aqueduct on Saturday, taking place pretty early on their 9-race card, going as the third event on Saturday. It is the Danger's Hour Stakes, this one going a mile on the turf course at Aqueduct for the older horses. And Craig, we've got a pretty small field signed on, just 6 runners entered for the turf. There is one MTO entrant drawn on the outside who would be a heavy favorite in the off chance this race does get rained off the turf, but I think we're going to have nice weather in the New York City area on Saturday. So expect this one to go forward on the turf. And even on the grass, I think we're going to have a heavy favorite in this race in the number 3, Big Everest.
I would think so. He had some big efforts towards the end of last year. I was pleasantly surprised when I looked at the field. When I saw it was the third race, I was a little leery. It was going to be maybe one that wasn't as competitive as this, maybe even a smaller field. But I think it's a decent betting race.
Big Everest, a horse who is proven over this Aqueduct turf course. He has won his last 2 races over that footing, although he is coming off a layoff into this Dangerous Hour. And Big Everest is a horse that likes to do his running on the front end. So before we get to the contenders, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector to see if Big Everest might work out his preferred trip in this race. And Craig, I think that's somewhat uncertain because there are at least a couple of other horses who do have tactical speed. And I think one in particular who could have intentions on taking the lead away from Big Everest.
Yeah, 11 Central, he's a little bit iffy as he's only run on the turf once. He didn't really show speed that day, but I think it's kind of unlikely that it was the surface. I think it was just some different circumstances that held him back. And I think he's very likely to be up there challenging with Big Everest.
Another horse who might show speed in this race is the number 2, So High. I think he's shown further back on the pace projector, primarily because he's been in some marathon races recently, but he has shown speed in some conventional route races, including last time out at Aqueduct. So I would not be surprised if that one gets an aggressive ride from some connections who can be aggressive at times. Let's also take a look at the Timeform US finish projector for this race, one of the new features in Timeform US. This a visual representation of the Timeform US power picks that you might be familiar with from the classic version of Timeform US. And Craig, no surprise to see the number 3 Big Everest predicted as the winner of this race. He's coming in off the best last out speed figure and has been in good form.
Yeah, and 3 of his last 4 speed figures are 118 or higher, which no one in this field has achieved on the turf.
Well, let's get into some of the main contenders in this Dangerous Hour. We're actually going to go through every horse in this 6-runner field in post-position order, beginning with the number 1, Anaconda. And let's go 3 starts back in his past performances to take a look at his runner-up finish in the Aqueduct Turf Sprint Championship. This one, he made a good run through the stretch to just fall short of passing the winner, nothing better in the late stages. And Craig, I think this is the story with Anaconda. He's a horse that has some tactical speed, should be able to take advantage of his rail draw as he's done in the past. And I think there's a good trip coming for this horse. We'll just see if he's good enough to upset the favorite.
Yeah, speed figures, he's very consistent horse. He's just a few points slower than the favorite when the favorite's doing his best running. I think maybe you can give a pass for those last couple. He shipped out to California. He got an okay trip, ran a similar speed figure. It was just tougher company than what he's been facing. And the synthetic race, obviously a different surface where he didn't run terrible, but I would expect him to run closer to what we saw in that last trip at Aqueduct.
I will note this horse is cross-entered in an optional claiming race on Thursday at Aqueduct over a sprint distance. I think his morning line is actually lower in this Danger's Hour, though, so I expect them to scratch and run in this small field on Saturday. The number 2 is So High, and he's the long shot in this field. I pegged him at 20-1 on the morning line. Definitely a little bit light on accomplishments compared to some others in this race, but as I was saying with regard to that pace projector, he is a horse that has shown front-running speed at different points in the past, including over some shorter distances. He's also shown speed going as far as 2 miles, so the connections have definitely tried him in a variety of different spots. This horse does have some ability. This is just a big ask.
Yeah, I spoke out a term when I said no other horses have run similar speed figures. It's just been so long since So High has done it that I kind of forgot about it. He's kind of an interesting horse. You mentioned he has tactical speed. In the last couple of times he's run shorter, yet when he ran longer distances, he wasn't able to make the lead. So I'm really not sure what they're going to do with him, but I also think it would be a pretty big leap in faith to think he's going to get back to those numbers, which came over 2 years ago.
The morning line favorite is the number 3, Big Everest, and we'll take a look at the reason why he's likely to be a short price in this race. His most recent stakes victory, which came going a mile over this Aqueduct turf course last November. And Craig, you could see he wins this race by a half length, but Joel Rosario, right up until mid-stretch here, is just hand riding him to the wire. I don't think he ever takes out the whip on this horse, as he just coasts in to be an easy winner of this Artie Schiller Stakes. And when Big Everest gets things his own way up front, is able to set moderate fractions, he's pretty tough to pass in the stretch.
He is. The one concern is the one time he didn't make the lead, he wasn't much of a factor in an allowance race. I mean, he ran okay that day. It was a strong allowance. You can see Pegasus winner Atone was back in third, Pegasus turf winner. So I don't want to knock that race too much, but it's definitely a concern when you're talking about a horse who's going to be odds on.
Yeah, and some people might remember, this is a horse that they had trouble figuring out the right running style for him early in his career. He would tend to get very rank in his races when he was not sent to the lead. And as Craig was alluding to, sending him to the front end in 4 of his last 5 starts has really proved key to bringing out the best form from Big Everest. He's won all 4 of those races where he went to the front end. Notably, all 4 of those races were when Joel Rosario was on his back. He is getting a rider switch to Manny Franco today, so we'll see if he can work out or has the same magic touch with Big Everest that Joel Rosario did. At a short price, I think there are some questions, though, and maybe we want to explore some other options. Perhaps one of those other options is the number 4, 11 Central. He is the horse that at least the pace projector believes could be challenging Big Everest for the lead. And Craig, as you were saying, this horse just has 1 prior turf effort. Perhaps, though, that wasn't a true indication of his turf ability. I went back and watched that race from Churchill Downs last May, and he really did not get the best trip. He broke well, but his rider just seemed to elect not to go to the front end coming out of the starting gate, and this horse just got put in a bad situation, was continually shuffled back through the running of that race, just following the wrong horses at different times. I think he has more turf ability than that result indicates, but he still has plenty of questions to answer at this stakes level.
Yeah, he's an interesting horse to me because he ran a 108 that day, which is similar to what he had been running on the dirt, and he did so with a tough trip. I do think, as I mentioned when we talked about the pace projector, he is very likely to be in front. When you look at some of those pace figures he's run on dirt, the lead is his for the taking if he handles the surface.
I'll say I can see why he sold for almost $1 million as a yearling, because when you watch his replays, this is a big, strapping, beautiful son of Into Mischief. I mean, it just looks like there's a lot of untapped potential here, and maybe it is on the turf. Into Mischief is a decent turf sire, and his dam, Sealy Hill, some people might remember, was a very good horse on the turf, and actually the dam of a graded stakes winner on the turf in Cambier Park. So we'll see what we get from 11 Central switching back to this surface. The number 5 is Celestial City, and we'll go back to his race 2 back at Aqueduct when he was the winner of the Grade 2 Hill Prince Stakes, and he got a great ride from Jose Lezcano this day. The rail was really the place to be during this time period at Aqueduct last October when the temporary rails were set at 0 feet, and Jose Lezcano just rode the rail for almost his entire trip, really until the top of the stretch when he came off the inside to run down the leaders. He's going away pretty impressively at the end of this race, Craig. However, the trip did not work out for him next time out when he closed out his 2022 campaign shipping out to Southern California.
No, obviously the Connections had high hopes shipping him out to running that grade 1. His race was almost over before it started. As you mentioned, tough trip, not a great start, wide all the way around the course, and just kind of trailed everybody around. So I'm putting a line through that race going back to his Hill Prince. I like the progression he made that day. He's a 4-year-old, so especially on turf, he's still improving. And I think he is the main contender, as you do, by judging by the morning line.
Yeah, he's a horse who was just moving forward with every start last year, right up until that seasonal finale in the Hollywood Derby. And just to expand upon that, I thought he got a pretty poor ride that day. Like you said, he broke slowly, but after that, it seemed like his rider just elected to put him in the 4-path for his entire trip, which is usually not a winning formula at Del Mar. And actually, this horse was hitting his best stride at the very end of that race. And if you watch the gallop out, even though he finished last of 10, pretty soon after the wire, he actually gallops out past the entire field. So it just feels like we didn't really see the best of Celestial City during the race last time out, and I expect a better effort as he returns from the layoff in this 1-mile event at Aqueduct. One more horse to talk about, that's the number 6 Cool House. And Craig, difficult assignment for this guy. He's the stablemate of 11 Central. Paulo Lobo is shipping up 2 of these OXO equine horses to New York for the stakes on Saturday. The difference with Cool House is he'll be getting on turf for the first time.
He will. He's light on speed figures. He's trying something new. To me, it just seems like a very big ask. There's definitely, I would say, some turf breeding there. So maybe he's not the craziest horse in the world. He wouldn't totally shock me if he won, but I'm going to look for others. It just seems like a big ask, the big jump up in class and also the change to a new surface.
I would agree with that. I question whether the ability is really there to beat a field like this, and he would have to improve on the turf. Well, let's throw up the top picks for both Craig and I think we're pretty much on the same page here, Craig. Big Everest, definitely the horse to beat, but there are some potential pace challengers in this race that might prevent him from getting his typical perfect trip. And I think Celestial City, a horse that had a bit of a trip last year, and if that pace develops, he should be the one that's charging fastest at the end.
Yeah, I always like to look for these younger, improving horses who seem to be moving in the right direction. He's one of them. And I think Big Everest has shown, I just am a little leery of the layoff. It's not a strong suit for Christophe Clement in this situation. So I'm going to go for a little more value with Celestial City.
I do think the number 4, 11 Central is a little bit interesting, but I couldn't quite pull the trigger putting him on top. So both Craig and I do agree on the number 5, Celestial City, in this Dangerous Hour Stakes on Saturday at Aqueduct. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.